Hey, welcome to another edition of Try Knoxville. Mike Roberts along for the ride, and as always, we want to start with thanking our sponsor, Design Metal Art. They've got a big craft show coming up this weekend at the Dyer Hudson Building at the Marion County Fairgrounds, and that starts at 10 o'clock on Saturday. So we do invite you to check that out as you start in on this project we're going here with Try Knoxville. And speaking of projects, as we open up the show, Cassi Pearson, superintendent here at Knoxville School District. A lot of talk, a lot of things going on, so much to talk about. I don't know where to start, but I want to start, I think, for my own personal, it's my show. I can do what I want here, okay?
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so I want to start off with last year, my youngest granddaughter, who is now 4, she was 3 then, had the opportunity to go out and be dropped off at the same place that my other 2 grandchildren were, because you guys started a new program for 3-year-olds. And I gotta say, it worked out great.
Yeah, we are so fortunate, I think, to have a partnership with Stepping Stones Early Learning Center, and they have helped us create a vision for the best way to take care of kids from the time they're born all the way up through elementary school in a partnership that makes it really convenient for parents and grandparents, anyone who is a caregiver. And having them, all on the same site has provided so many different opportunities for families and for the school, to be honest. And so when we started that 3-year-old program, it was in conjunction with how to best serve students and families and looking at early childhood education. It is such a critical developmental stage. And so the earlier we can actually start working with students on their academics, but more importantly, maybe their social skills, being able to be around students the same age and different adults in and out of the classroom, or being moved maybe from a child care center room at Stepping Stones over to one of our preschool rooms and back. They get to learn that different adults have different styles, but they learn how to trust. They learn how to interact with adults and kids their age. And there's just so much power in that. And then they are comfortable when they go into our 4-year-old preschool. And then when we transition them into kindergarten, they've been around all of those kids and they've been around the adults. And it just makes things go so much smoother. And I think, especially since COVID, we really are seeing kids needing that social interaction. But being in a safe space, and we've been able to provide that.
I will say she's 4 years old now. She's in preschool, as they officially call it. Kudos to what you're talking about, because her transition, she was shy. She came in shy. It wasn't, I don't think, 2 weeks later, and we broke that shy part of it. This year in the summertime, you ready to start school back? Yep. So already that mold's been created. And we'll talk more about the safe space. I got to put it in my head here and talk about that a little bit too. But Stepping Stones was pre-Cassi. It was around before you were.
Oh, well before I was.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I'm so impressed with this community is their ability to be visionary and maybe to do some things ahead of the curve in partnership work. I know Dr. Flack and the community had partnered in many different ways for childcare, and that's where Stepping Stones kind of was created, and being able to put their facilities on school property, that didn't happen back in the early 2000s. So that, I think, was really cutting edge, and the long-lasting impact of that is huge. So being able to look at those private-public partnerships is something that we have a history of doing, and it has served our community really well, and I anticipate it to last long into the future as well.
If I remember correctly, and again, you weren't here, so I don't know if you know the complete story, but Stepping Stone's staff was originally VA child care staff, if I remember correctly.
That's how I understand it as
Yeah,
well. And
yeah.
then when they had buildings that were not going to be able to be used,
Sure.
and probably not in the best of shape. And so,
Well, the VA had already made their announcement they're going to close down. They finished everything off in '09 anyway. And I think that particular development, you said it was '06 for Stepping Stones, I think they were one of the first ones to go because that was the same size as your doctor quarters were.
correct.
So those buildings were all, shut down unnecessarily in my mind, but that's history. We can't change it, as we
right.
say. So the VA has been a big part of Knoxville. It's been a big part of everything. How tough is it when you mentioned visionary? How tough is it when you, again, you weren't here for this, 2009, VA shuts down. The way I understand it, it was 1,500 jobs total, day shift, night shift, weekends, whatever. That takes away kids from the community.
About 300
Yeah,
is what we lost during that time period. And when schools are funded based on their student population, that is hard. And about the same time as when there was some economic decline in the state, too. So the school hit, I would say, a pretty rough patch there between 2009 and 2000 and probably 11 or 12. We had the 10% across the board cuts at the state level. And that was when the decision to close East Elementary,
Right.
downsize, came. And that's a heartbreaking decision for the local community. But one of the things that I find fascinating is how well Knoxville has come together and found ways to overcome obstacles. You talk about the VA.
right.
When we were doing our very last project with the middle school, we were starting all of our planning in 2019. That was before the VA property was transferred or that we had any idea that that property would become locally controlled and owned. And so when we're making plans, you do the very best you have with the information you have. But we had no idea that that would actually come to pass then in early 2020. And what an opportunity that provided. So we do all of our planning in 2018, 2019 without that knowledge and continue to move forward. And it was so exciting because as we finished that project and started looking more holistically again, it's kind of that full circle, from when stepping stones came from the VA to their current location there by West Elementary. And now that the VA has become locally owned and they have set aside some space for potential school use in the future. So amazing what a couple of decades, can do for a community. And
There was a lot of negativity when East was closed. A lot of negativity.
yeah,
But again, and I didn't know the exact numbers. I really wasn't paying attention, I guess, back then. But losing 300 students, that kind of makes sense that you've got to do some cutbacks and rearranging. At the same time, I can't remember when West was expanded.
the 15-16 school year.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you look at, so North Star right now has right at 350 students
Okay.
at North Star. So
Right.
when you talk about losing 300 students, that in essence is, one of our elementary buildings. So it was the right decision, as difficult as that was. It has kept us financially solvent and stable and allowed us to really make the best use of what we have to work with. But along with that, we can be looking towards the future. And we know the future has some great opportunities. Decisions will need to be made here in the next couple of years on exactly what direction the
Right.
community will want to go with that. But just knowing that there are opportunities and different potential options is exciting because there are some school districts and there are some communities that have very few options. But Knoxville is not one of those. We seem to capitalize on opportunities when they come around as a team.
I'm going to go back to old school Mike Roberts. Excuse me. Boy, that doesn't really happen. These allergies and stuff today. But when I was in school, it was kindergarten center, if you will. It was first grade through sixth grade. Then 7, 8, 9 was the old junior high. And then high school was down by the Kenlock Stadium. That's changed. Everything has to change. The new high school was built, yada, yada, yada. At what point during the West Elementary expansion, or was it already decided that that's where kindergarten, first grade, and second grade stay, everything else goes to North? Was that during your administration or was that prior? I don't remember.
No, actually, when I arrived, West Elementary just had kindergarten and first grade, and North Star was second, third, fourth, and fifth.
Right.
And they were busting at the seams.
Yeah.
And so trying to figure out the right mix was part of the conversation in 2015 when we were looking at West Elementary. When we did our district-wide assessment, West Elementary really was the one that we decided we could afford. We used sales tax money to do that. And that project, one of the big decisions for that was we wanted families, when they come into Knoxville, when they have their 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds,
Right.
we wanted them to have the best experience so that they would choose us, because there are districts around that have great early childhood buildings and programs, and we wanted them to know so do we. So we started at West Elementary, and as we looked at that, the location, of course, was prime for what we wanted as far as a campus, because when you have those efficiencies, that helps financially, it helps staffing, and it helps families for convenience. And so then we looked at the building itself, and the structure of the building is great because it was constructed well from the inside. As far as handicapped accessibility was there, the ability to add on was there. So when we did the addition, we found out we could afford to add an additional full wing of classrooms. And that was where our second graders were going to go.
Okay.
Because that kind of did two things. It created a really nice K2 building, but it eliminated the extra pressure at North Star from spacing, from the spacing aspect. And so being able to do that with sales tax money, we did not have to really reconstruct a whole lot in the old building except for the main entrance. We talk about safety and security a lot
Right.
when you and I get together.
Right.
And having a secured entrance there was really critical. That's one of the things that is a high priority, especially in today's world. And so we completely gutted and moved around the office area. And then from there, just had the gymnasium addition and the classroom addition. And the other classrooms just got new ceilings, new flooring, paint, cabinets, and windows. In 1960s window, if even in your homes,
Right.
you end up replacing windows after
Sure.
many decades. And so it didn't have quite the structural challenges as what North Star will have when we get ready to look at that. And so it was not a real difficult decision that West needed to be renovated. And we did that in the course of a summer, a school year, and another summer. So, you're talking a good 18 months of construction.
Right.
And so we finished that up and moved in October, I believe the second graders came over, of 2016. And so once we completed that first project, it was time to start talking about other needs in the community. And at that point, we actually went with our partnership with the city, because the tennis courts and the old skate park that was across from the high school
Right.
were in dire condition and really posed safety concerns. And so we did that one in 2017, and then we started taking a look at next projects. And originally we're looking at something with Ken Lock Stadium. And at that point, the task force came up with the old middle school really was priority.
Right.
We have more kids and more things being served out of that building, and it was just not conducive on many levels. Safety, security, maintenance. We called it, actually, we didn't call it. One of our consultants referred to it as the Frankenstein building, because it had had so many different additions and systems that had been hooked together
Yeah.
that were really hard to maintain.
I think, if I remember right, that was 1959 was the very first high school then. I think it wasn't even 3 years later they were adding on to it again.
I think that might have been an
adding on.
addition.
Yeah.
I believe it was 1954
54,
maybe
okay,
was the
yeah,
original
yeah.
construction. Then I think 59 was the first edition.
Yeah.
And there
And
were
it just-
multiple ones.
Boom. So I went to high school there. I'm the old guy. I went to high school there. And they added on again after that because the students came in the back door as far as where you parked at, the parking lot. When you drove, you came in the backside, or you came in through the circle. It was a weird layout, and not so much the Frankenstein, but let's go back to safety again. That's a whole different monster right there. That thing had more doors because of the Frankenstein construction, if you will,
Yep.
of in and out. The principal's office was actually up closer to where the old Dan's Village pump used to be, right across from the old swimming pool. That was the principal's office. You came in the south side by the auditorium and the gymnasium. Later on, they built the back, so it was a drop-off place for the back there. Safety is so important. And I'm segueing into this, if you will, because one of the projects that was done after West Elementary was the new middle school, like you mentioned. The task force that put that all together, I remember the town hall, I emceed the town hall meeting on that deal. And there was some friction there. You know, why are you making it 2 stories? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Project gets passed. It gets started. COVID. Hello, pandemic.
Wow. Yeah.
Hello, pandemic. But yet still got the project done. I don't know how much, I don't remember the timeline, to be honest with you, if we were behind schedule a couple months or what it was. So I do remember it opened up like in October.
Yep. We were, the actual original timeline was December.
Okay.
They told us not to expect to get in before December, so we actually were
Ahead of schedule.
a little ahead of schedule.
Right.
You know, when you have exciting things happening and you want your children to be able to take advantage of them as quickly as possible, we push a little bit.
Sure.
And sometimes that works. And so we were really excited to be able to get that project completed. And it was fascinating. We designed that whole building during COVID, and we were on Zoom calls. So doing that kind of complexity of work over Zoom, and most of us had never really worked over Zoom, so it was a learning curve on so many aspects. But one of the things, and I know you know this because you've been involved in some of the group work, every single decision is made after a lot of thought, a lot of discussion, looking at all options. And it's really hard to communicate all of that information.
Paying for it was a big deal because it was a bond.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Such a bond.
I want to give kudos to how it turned out, but I want to start talking bond and paying for things because that's a big deal, especially nowadays with the economy the way it is and everything else.
Yep, Mike, it's always been a big deal. Property taxes are a big deal.
Yeah.
They always have
Yeah.
been, and they always will be. And
Yeah.
that's something we're really sensitive to. So I'm glad we're going there.
I think it's more now because people are feeling it at the grocery stores, at the gas pumps. I like the layout, and I knew I would because I worked for the school. I drove school buses. I went on basketball trips in the middle of wintertime where you're dropping off JV. I won't mention the school, Centerville. You're dropping off JV at this school, taking high school basketball players over to a different school, and then happen to go back to JV. If you're a parent and you have a kid playing JV ball and another kid getting ready to play high school, you're parking in 2 different parking lots, hoping you're going to get close enough to park for that high school game. We have a situation out here that we have a one-stop shop, and I like that. It's less clutter. I think the parents would agree. It's less hassle. So yeah, back to the bonding thing, and again, it has been an issue for years. I can remember my parents talking about it when I was growing up. I didn't care back then. I pay taxes now, so I care. Okay. Again, I emceed for the middle school. It was a bond. I think people get confused, and I'm going to travel down this road a little bit, and I'll probably get yelled at for it. I think they get confused between what their tax levy is and what their tax assessment is and how it comes to the middle. Because when Cassi built the middle school, which, by the way, you're pretty good, you built a middle school. When Cassi built the middle school, our taxes went up. Our taxes keep going up. If people are paying attention every year, and this used to happen every 3 or 4 years, now it happens almost every year, our assessments are going up. Our property values are going up.
Yeah.
You know, I stole my house for $80,000, and now my house is valued at $170,000 almost.
That's more than double. That's
Yeah,
pretty good.
and I've done nothing other than put windows in and a paint job. So, I mean, how is it, and it's difficult to explain, but we built a new high school in 1995 that was bonded. Took several times to pass that bond. You know, the middle school passed the first bond. Was it education that helped that pass as far as educating the people?
I think so. I wish I knew exactly what all impacted that vote because we'd love to recreate it, of course.
Right.
I think part of it is just need. You showcase the need and you talk to as many people as you can and try to explain the reasons behind it. And we had just fantastic people who came into that task force, listened, asked hard questions. We were able to get answers from our consultants or the experts or dig in locally to find answers as well. And came up, I think, with a really good plan. And they went out and talked to the people that they knew. So it's getting our community members involved at the ground level and understanding, everything from the beginning on why would we move this direction and what would it do to property taxes. And if we wanted to continue moving forward, we know we have to make improvements on our buildings.
Right.
Just like your house, if you don't do anything, it doesn't take too long before it's not efficient, it doesn't function well, and you have roof leaks and everything else. And so we have buildings, that were brand new. So if you were born in the 50s and the 60s, you got to experience brand new school buildings, and they were state of the art at that time. And so those are now some of our a prime group of people who vote. They're in their 70s
Right.
now. They're late 60s, 70s, early 80s, and when they were in school, they were in new buildings, and so that seems like yesterday.
Right.
I don't know about you. I know I'm old now, but I look back and it seems like it was yesterday. So I forget that time has passed and things have changed. But when you actually get into school buildings, you realize how much things have changed.
Yeah.
And we have had, I would say over the last 30 years, we've had great maintenance and custodial workers. They have done everything they could with the budgets that we've had to keep buildings up. But just like anything else, new technologies and new styles and new needs arise, and education looks different today than it did before. Back in the 50s and 60s, education really was trying to make sure that people were ready to go to work in manufacturing. They wanted you to be on the assembly line. They wanted you to be able to follow directions and do
Right.
what you were told. That is not the case anymore. We are educating kids to really think on their own and to push limits a little bit and to collaborate. I'm doing a lot of project work and real life work, and so our spaces need to look different. And so those are some of the things we want people to be able to see and experience and understand as we move forward. And then, of course, going back to the taxes, in order to get support, people have to understand the benefit of it, but they also have to feel confident that we can afford it. And they have to be willing to help us afford it, because when we did the new project, we knew that would be a property tax increase at that time.
But what was it, a levy increase, though?
It was and it wasn't. So
Let's go through the timeline of this thing, because
Yeah.
I've been around this town of ours all my life now. I remember the high school bond. I remember the tax levy then. It isn't that much different.
It's not. And that is the part, I think that our business office has worked so hard, and I believe that we have for, again, decades. School finance, especially when you talk property tax rates, can ebb and flow a little bit. And as we invested in the new high school, in
Right.
the 90s, which we're talking is almost 30,
Yeah.
35 years old,
Yeah.
that had gone, we had paid for that. So that came off. And that's when we borrowed a little bit to do the auditorium.
Right.
And then those things are coming off. So it's timing out our projects so it doesn't have a huge implication, because we've got some debt that's going away to add the new debt on. And so I looked something up in 2009. So we're talking about kind of that VA timeline. In 2009, the property tax rate here was just under $16.50 per thousand. So $16.50. Our property tax rate this year is $16.97. $16.97.
So 47 cents
So 47 cents
per thousand.
per thousand,
Right.
yes. So the rate is in essence within half a dollar, and that was from 2009 to 2025 because our rate goes through next fiscal year.
Right.
So that's a long time, and the rate really hasn't changed that much. Now it's kind of gone up and down a few cents here and there over the course of time, but we've worked really hard to keep it stable because we know that our patrons need to be able to count on that. So we want to try to keep it as stable as possible. We know we need to do the investing. We've got to invest in the buildings because if you wait too long, you end up having huge bills all at once, which is not a good thing.
Are we there right now with North Elementary? That's the oldest building we have. Well, West Elementary was redone recently.
Yep.
Are we there with North now?
So North Star, that
Yeah.
is our next project, and that is kind of our final building that needs attention. And the good news is we believe that we can do that project without raising the rate.
Okay.
That being said, what would happen is our current rate would need to be extended for probably 4 or 5 years on the
Okay.
back end of our current middle school debt. We would just increase that out a couple of years to be able to pay for the North Star project. So it's really good timing, in our opinion, because a couple of extra years of the same rate that you're currently experiencing, to me, is a great investment. With North Star, and North Star is a really interesting building because the original North Star was built in 1960. And then
I've lost track of how many times that's been added. I think literally since I graduated, I'm going to guess 3 times?
So in 1979,
Right.
there was a 3-classroom addition. In
Okay.
1995, there was a 4-classroom addition and a bathroom. And then in 2005, there were 5 classrooms, 2 small group rooms, and bathrooms.
So twice since I've graduated and once while I was in school still.
Yes, and so it has had, it's the main building plus 3 additions over time. And we really, if you take a look at needs, and we go back to safety, security, but also just making sure we are up to code on handicapped accessibility.
ADA has changed since that building was built a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
A whole lot. And so just for those types of things, we know we have to do something in the next 3 to 5 years. Whether that's renovating that building, and that's an option,
Right.
or looking at building a new building that would be closer to our other locations, our other campus, for some efficiencies. I don't know what the task force, the board, or the voters are going to decide. Our job is to make sure that we really dig in and get all of the answers for what both of those options would take. Because you want to make the best educated decision for the long-term return on our investment as we can. We have to know how much we can afford.
Right.
We have to know what it would look like if we renovate and what the benefits and what the challenges are with that. And then we need to do the same thing with a new building, since we will have the ground to do that if we so choose to do that, and what those benefits could be and what the challenges would be. And so we are going to be looking here in the next year for members of the community, staff, and parents to come together and look through all of that information, ask the really hard questions, and at the end of their time together, provide a recommendation to the school board where they think what they think would be the best long-term solution for Knoxville School District. And again, trying to be visionary on how do we create spaces that are flexible enough to evolve with educational practices, but also have potential for growth. I am so proud of our community because we are growing.
Right.
And in today's world,
New housing's helping out.
it is new housing. We've got new employers. There's just so many amenities. Even I want to give shout outs to our city, our hospital, even the racetrack. I love going by. We're seeing more suites go up. So whether it's recreational facilities, whether it's housing, jobs, good health care, good schools, when people are getting to choose where they live because of remote work and flexibility in today's world, we have people who are coming to Knoxville, and that's so important because we need to keep growing. If you're not a growing community, you're a dying community.
Absolutely. You can't stagnate. If you stagnate, you die.
Yeah. Yes.
We've had that conversation on air, about off air, everything else, not just with you, with the city manager, with the mayor, everything else. You cannot stagnate. You cannot go with the, what's the word I'm looking for? Excuse me. The word I'm looking for, it was good enough for me when I was in school. It's good enough for my grandkids. I got news for you, folks. We're out of time, but we're going to invite you back again.
Thank you.
Am I sold that we need a new North School? I don't know yet. It hasn't been presented to me yet. What I will tell you during the middle school thing, I wasn't sold. I am seated. I became sold. And it goes like this. Told my parents the same thing. Why was it okay for you to have a new school and my grandkids not to have a new school? And that's kind of my feeling along this thing. Education's changed so much too. You and I have had conversations. When I went through school, kindergarten, if you could color between the lines, spell your name, and do the alphabet, boom, you sailed on. Totally different monster. I want to invite you back to talk about that sometime too, because not just spell your own name, but we're talking about reading. We're talking about stuff that's probably 3rd and 4th grade, maybe even 5th grade material when I was in school, that they got to do now in kindergarten.
Yes, and some of that's just coming out. We just got our new math standards.
Yeah.
And when I first started teaching in 2nd grade, we were starting to teach time and money in 2nd grade. Those are very abstract concepts, and they are in the new kindergarten standards in the state of Iowa. So starting this year, time and money are part of the things we expect of 5-year-olds who are still learning to tie their shoe.
Right.
So education has changed greatly. And I think we just need to make sure that we're ready for it and we're providing the best opportunities for all of our kids. And some of that is showing up. I think one of the other pieces that COVID helped us to realize is attendance and being with people and being present is really important. And
Absolutely.
so we are really emphasizing now we need our attendance to be good. We need kids to be at school every day so that they can get those learning opportunities. And in order for that to happen, parents need to make sure they feel their kids are safe there.
Right.
They want to make sure that they are in healthy environments. They want to make sure that, everything is set up for their children to succeed. And that's what we want as well. So we look forward to kind of launching into this next phase of facility planning. And I guess my promise to the community is we will dig deep and we are going to look at all options. There have been no decisions made. It's really digging in and looking. There are good and bad things to every decision that could be made. And so it's trying to figure out what is going to serve us the best long term and really be that return on the investment, because there is an investment here.
Right. Will you come back?
I'd love to come back.
Awesome. Appreciate you, and we'll see what happens. And next time we'll have a little more information, hopefully, about what's going on with North. We'll also have some information about recently they talked about with the alumni and selling of Kenlock Stadium. We'll bring you up to speed on that, as that's due to close by close to the end of the year, before December 18th. Also want to remind everybody, again, thanking to our sponsors, Design Metal Art has their craft and vendor show this Saturday, 10 o'clock in the morning at Dyer Hudson. Make sure you check out their Facebook page for more information on that. Until then, that's going to wrap up this edition of Try Knoxville. We'll see you next time.